We are sitting in your offices, which currently, well, they are, not currently, but they're above Manchester Square, which holds a lot of significance to you. Tell us a little bit about Manchester Square and what it means to you.
Yeah, it does, Ben. So I chaired Feilding Promotion for over 20 years, and our office was 10 Manchester Square, pretty much the whole time that I was involved. So I was crossed between Ferguson. I used to be in Ferguson Street for, 27 years, I think. Used to be across there all the time, but I was involved with the upgrade of the square. In fact, the streetscape upgrade of the whole town centre, really. I was chair of the building design and building committee of the clock tower. We restored and shifted the Boer War Memorial. I was secretary of the Drover and Dog project just up the road.
Oh yes,
yep. And was quite instrumental in making that happen. So the family, we've got one of the park benches in the square, and my uncle who is no longer with us. There's a brick there to remember him. So I just love this office. I look down into the square. I'm still on the Farmers Market Management Committee, and I helped kick that off whenever that was, a long time ago. So yeah, there's a lot that's happened in the square. We've had lots of events in the square. We had the current king who was here as a visitor some years ago, and I met him in the square. But we've had Christmas parades and rural days, and so it does hold a lot of really good memories for me.
So I just noticed that you're a Justice of the Peace. That's something that you've kept that hidden from me.
I actually just got a certificate recently for 30 years as a Justice of the Peace.
Oh wow!
So, yeah. No, it's been quite interesting over the years. Search warrants for police, the parole people sometimes, but mainly it's just ministerial stuff and just helping people with, witnessing documents and declarations and affidavits, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, more mundane stuff.
Most of it is, yeah. But the search warrants were pretty exciting.
Yeah, I imagine they would be.
Oh, okay, didn't know that was happening. Yeah.
So that's a little bit of inside knowledge that you would have then of like stuff that was going on in town.
Yeah, I quickly phoned Mum and said, "Run for it."
Real estate.
Yep.
How did you get into that?
Well, my dad had been manager of a stock firm which included rural real estate, and then in 1969 he set up his own real estate business, one-man band and sort of 2 or 3 people. I went off and trained to become a registered valuer in Wellington, did 5 years of that, so it's very closely related, property. And back in those days I actually did both. So I was sort of almost real estate by day, valuation by night. And I decided after a few years that I actually enjoyed the real estate side of it more than the valuation side of it. Valuation was more compliance. People didn't really want to get a valuation. They got one because the bank said they had to, or the insurance company, or there was a dispute, and nobody ever liked the valuation. It was either too high or too low, and they weren't particularly keen to pay for it. But and I wasn't very good at debt collecting. So most of real estate is win-win, where you end up with an outcome where both people are either slightly happy or slightly unhappy with, but it's good enough to make it work and allow them to get on to the next stage of their life. And so I've always enjoyed that the people side of it more than valuation was more working on your own.
Yeah. Outside of council and work, what are your passions?
So my elevator pitch is I'm a full-time real estate agent, and council's my hobby because I'm no good at golf. But to go a bit further, so I have Feilding Promotion, council. I do get a real kick out of the good projects and ticking things off and making things better. So that is very much a hobby. Yeah, it sounds a bit sick, I know, but it is a hobby. It's a bit sad.
It sounds like somebody who really doesn't like golf. I
like golf. I'm just useless at golf. But I love watching sport. I like music. I like. I'm actually now the patron of the arts centre here.
Oh, cool.
Art Society. So I like art. I like drama. My wife's involved with the theatre.
I occasionally see you on your e-bike as well.
I'm Joan and I have got e-bikes,
Yeah.
and that's been a huge success.
Yeah.
Yep. Not in terms of losing weight, or but in terms of getting out and about, a bit
Yeah.
of exercise, fresh air, and actually just seeing the scenery, and it clears your head. Love it.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'd do sort of, I don't know, probably 100 k's a week, something like that, which is not a lot, but it's if I go a couple of weeks without getting out on the bike, I get a bit grumpy.
Yeah.
So I can tell it's doing me some good.
You can notice that sort of impact that it's having on your mental health.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So last weekend, both Saturday, Sunday, would have done, I don't know, I think we did 60 k's, I suppose, which is not a lot, but it's thoroughly enjoyable.
You say it's not a lot. It's 60 k's more than I've ever done. So.
Well, I cheat because it's got a little motor to help me. But the wonderful thing, if I used to have a 10 speed, I used to ride up the Wadestown Hill in Wellington.
Oh right, yeah.
Daily. It was my commute. But if I looked at that hill today, I'd just go no. Whereas now I can look at a hill today and go and smile and think I can do this.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
good.
So what's coming out in our conversation already is how passionate you are about Feilding. So where does that come from?
I'd love to see, well, I believe that we're aiming to try and make Feilding the best country town in the world, best agri-business centre in the world of its type. So that sort of motivates me. I was really worried about it being a potentially dying rural town back in the 80s. And so I got involved. I remember making a submission to the Feilding Borough Council, so that was pre-89.
Yeah, I was going to say, it must be
So-
before the changes.
Yeah, I think I was still in school uniform at the time, but no, I was probably in my 20s. So I sort of got involved wanting to make the place better,
Yeah.
and also being in business as a real estate agent and having been part of a small company. I wanted that to be successful too into the future. So just after I came back to Feilding, we had the Rogernomics 1984, the supplementary minimum prices for stock. Farm produce were ripped out from under the farmers. A lot of farmers went under at that time. Feilding went from being a fairly wealthy rural town to being a rather poor rural town in pretty much overnight. And so that got me motivated, and I remember making submissions in the 80s about doing up the square, and then realised, well, you can't do it on your own, you've got to join with a group of people. So I did that, got involved in a group called Enterprise Feilding, and then a few years later we made a few mistakes, but we learned a bit, and we set up what is now what became known as Feilding Promotion. We employed back in 1993 a young lady who told us that Feilding needed a bomb under us, and she is my good friend Helen Warboys, who is our mayor.
Yeah.
And so I've worked with Helen for 30 years, 20 of those at Feilding Promotion. I was the chair, she was the manager, and we've now been on council together for 6.5 years. So I've always enjoyed the physical projects and things that last, like building a clock tower. It's still there.
Yeah.
Helen was really good at events, and I found it quite hard to put so much energy into something that was all over and just a memory or a photograph.
Right.
But so that we had quite different roles.
At the end of this 3 years, what is something you'd like to see council having achieved that will have benefited the community?
I'm personally excited about the town centre refresh. I would like this year for us to at least come up with a plan and some priorities, and progress will be made in an affordable manner over quite a long period of time. So, but actually programming it out and putting the priorities in and picking off some low-hanging fruit, that's something we can get on with fairly quickly. District plan review. So I chair the district planning focus group. We're doing a growth strategy, which is important. The rural review, the residential review, and I call it the business zones tweaks. I don't think we need to do a lot with the business zones, but we do need a few changes. One of them being sort of to allow more apartments in the town centre. That particularly if we lose district planning to regional committees, I really want to get as much done for our community before we lose it as possible, because once it's gone, there'll be one person from each council in our region, and could be me. I certainly don't know a lot about Wanganui or Ruapehu or Tararua, and they don't know much about us. So I really worry about that.
Yeah.
Because I think we've got some really good planning staff and some good people from the governance side. So those are things that I think are really crucial that we get right.
Thank you very much for spending 10 minutes with. I don't know how I'm going to cut this down, but I'll do my best.
We've been going 10 minutes, have we?